Welcome to ST Drums TV. Today I proudly present to you our latest snare drums from Stegner Instruments. I'm going to show you the series A02, V01 and X01. Well, you may ask, what's behind these letters? Well, the letter A stands for the first series of snares that we ever made as Stegner Instruments. The first edition, A01, was released last year, and this A02 is the second edition of this snare drum, with slight differences compared to the first one. These snares are always limited, which means the snares that you see right now with the rosewood finish, these are the only ones available. There are three sizes: 4.5 inch, 6 3/4 and 8 inch. The shells of the A series are exclusive, which means they are only available here. In this case, the thickness is 6 mm and they are made from a combination of beech and birch wood. This combination was chosen to have a blend of the two sound characteristics. Beech wood is usually very round and very warm, and birch wood is usually a bit more attacky and screams a bit more. The finish on this A02 is a rosewood replica veneer that's put on the outside of the shell and also on the inside. The lugs are our own ST lugs, made from solid brass with a chrome plating. The rubber washers under there are also exclusive for this series. Their special feature is that the piece of rubber also plugs into the shell, which is a technique that was introduced by Sonor with their Highlight and Designer series. We use the Trick multi-step as a throw-off. In this case, it also has a 3D printed TPU washer that also plugs into the shell, which is also an exclusive part only available on this snare right now. Not unlike the lugs, the hoops are also made from brass, 2.5 mm with a chrome plating. The height of this particular snare is actually metric. It's 17 centimeters. It's roughly about 6.75 inch, but it's not exactly that. It's somewhere in between. We choose that because it's the ideal format for our lugs, and also it fits perfectly between the 5.5 and 8 inch snare. On the inside of the shell, there's a stamp with the series number, the production date, and also the edition, which means in this case, for these snares, it's 1 of 3, 2 of 3, and 3 of 3, which is written inside the shell. You may wonder how these snare drums sound. Have a listen. Now let's move over to the V01. It's 14 by 5.5. The shell recipe is mahogany and poplar mix with maple reinforcement rings. The V in V01 stands for vintage. So all of the snares that will be released with this letter are going to be in some extent an homage to a vintage snare that was previously released by another manufacturer. In this case, you can see the 60s black oyster finish, and you may already guess it was inspired by the world's most famous British four-headed pop group. Let's leave it at that. The inside of the shell is coated with a so-called Edelweiss finish or off-white. The lugs are an homage to the Slingerland type of beaver tail lugs. The strainer in this case is a fairly simple model, which does just on and off, but that's enough for this snare. The hoops are 2.3mm steel hoops, but they are not regular triple flange hoops. Actually, the top of the hoop is flanged to the inside, which gives you a very particular rim click and rim shot sound. Right next to the strainer, there is the baseball bat muffler by Canopus, and we also use their vintage dry snare wires on this snare drum. Unlike the A02, this snare drum, like we already mentioned, has a wrap finish, 60s Black Oyster by Delma, made in the USA. If you put wrap on the shell, there's always the question where you're going to put the overlap or the seam. Originally, Ludwig made the shells and the wraps in the same house, so they could incorporate the first layer of wrap with the shell material. With that technique, the overlapping was not too thick, but unfortunately this is only possible if the shell and the wrap are completed in the same house. Unfortunately, we cannot offer that. However, we also find a nice solution where to put the overlapping. It would be an option to put the overlapping directly under a lug, so the pressure of the lug would actually press down the overlapping. However, the problem with this technique would be that this particular lug would sit a little bit higher, and therefore the tension rods would not be parallel to the shell. It would not be a big problem, but we try to avoid that. Therefore, our overlapping just ends right next to the lug. Visually, it's still a bit hidden behind the lug, but it does not change the height of this lug. One big difference of this snare compared to the original is the placement of the hardware parts. Unlike these snare drums, this vintage style snare only has 8 lugs. From my perspective, as a player, the logo is 12 o'clock, the air vent is 6 o'clock, the strainer is 9 o'clock, and the butt plate is 3 o'clock. On the original snare drum, there was a logo in the middle, on one side the strainer, and on the other side you could find the muffler. On our snare, we have the strainer and the muffler both on the left bottom side of the snare, so the badge can still face the audience, and with your left hand you can quickly manage the throw off and also the muffler. Or some people put it in the middle or on the right, however you like, but this is the placement that made the most sense for us. By the way, we have an upcoming video where we dive deep into vintage Ludwig snares, and also we have a little sound demo in this video where we compare this V01 to the original Jazz Festival snares. Like I already mentioned, the A-series snares are always limited. The V-series snares will not be limited, which means we have this prototype here. You can test it in our shop, you can check the sound demos, and if you order it, it takes a little time, but we will produce a new one for each customer. While these snares have their limited edition on the inside, which means 1 of 3, 2 of 3, and so on, these snares also will have a number. It's not limited, but you can still see if it's the first one, the second one, or the third one produced, or however many we are going to produce after this video. Now our final snare for today. This is the X01. In this case, the X is not one particular series. Actually, it's not a series at all. X in this case just stands for a very unique instrument, and we only make one of these X series for each number, which means this is the X01, the X02 was already sold to a customer, then will be an X03 and so on, but it will only be this one snare with this particular set of skills. No, with this particular set of features. In this case, the most important thing about this snare is the shell. This is a true solid walnut shell. True solid means it's not plywood, it's not stave wood, it's not steam bent, it's actually cut from one solid piece of wood. One tree stem basically from a walnut tree, and with a milling machine they just made a shell out of it. They also have 2 reinforcement rings on the inside, and the outside is clear lacquered so you can see the nice grain of the wood. It has the same ST lugs as these A02 snares, the same washers. However, the difference with this one is it has die-cast hoops for a more focused sound, and also the throw-off is different. In this case, it's the dual glide throw-off and butt end made by Sonor, which is one of the best strainers on the market. In particular, I like the feature that you can clip off the wire like this, and basically you could have multiple wires with these bottom pieces and just exchange them very quickly. Like the A02 series, also on the inside you can find our stamp, X01 series, 1 of 1, and also the production date. The snare wires on this one is also pretty unique. It's the Bibin snare wires, handmade in Serbia, and the model is the medium sensitive wire, which has 0.4 millimeter wires. It's very, very crisp, and also if you play very light and quietly, still the wires will sound very amazing, but you can also really beat the snare and play it really loudly, and it's just a monster, no matter if you play quiet or loud. So thank you for watching. That's it for today for the Stegner Instruments series. I hope you liked our snares. I hope you will order them, and comment down below if you have any feedback. We have upcoming videos. One project that I'm very excited about is one very, very long in-depth video about the Sonor Designer series. Also, like I previously mentioned, we have a vintage Ludwig snare video with Martin Schneider, who showed us part of his collection. Also, we have a short video about the Sonor Pancake snare, and one video which talks about the way to replicate the famous Sonor phonic snare drum. Check out our shop stdrums.com to order these beautiful snares. You can send us an email if you have questions. So see you in the next video.